bodies. The Bible says that our bodies are meant for God's temple. You defile God's temple?
This kind of activity is the ultimate expression of ego. I mean, they obviously think of themselves as modern-day prophets.
And I couldn't imagine what it must be like to be gay or lesbian and listen to some of those things. You know, people talking about, you know, gay men eating each other's feces and lesbians drinking each other's urine. And they had small children there. The one protester family, he brings his family, and they put a bullhorn around a little boy's neck and were encouraging him to say things like, "Go home, faggot."
They're always standing up and yelling at people that, you know, you're going to hell and you're going to burn in the lakes of fire.
Now, when they're blaming gays and lesbians for it, it's not their fault. When 9/11 happened, it was because we had gays and lesbians. It was their fault. Hurricane Katrina, that's because you have gays and lesbians in New Orleans, that you're tolerating that.
I couldn't believe these words were coming out of someone who claimed to be a good Christian, you know.
If someone came up to me on the street and asked me, what in the world is Silent Witness? It's an organization of peacekeepers who organize to help the GLBT community have safe and peaceful events. As a secondary goal, we are there to stand up for the GLBT community and show that there are people who are willing to stand up for them.
So, silent witness, what is a silent witness?
Not to engage the protesters, but to just stand between them and the parade.
Our peacekeepers are not supposed to be talking to the protesters, the street preachers. That's the silent part of Silent Witness.
So we have called ourselves peacekeepers. We are there to diffuse angry situations and make sure there is no violence.
The rainbow umbrellas are a key feature of the work that we do.
They just want to show a presence without engaging, give them nothing to really fight against. They kind of lose their steam, I think.
I will say is that not everybody who goes through training decides they can do this.
It is sometimes hard to hold your mouth closed and not say things. When we do our recruiting, we largely recruit from allies. Straight people. We are not in any way trying to exclude the GLBT community. The GLBT event is for those GLBT folks.
I have not actually actively recruited any group. What ends up happening are people see us in action and then they contact us through the website and ask how can they get involved and how can they help.
We schedule training basically on an as-needed basis.
We have a couple of different types of training that we do. Obviously, we would want to help them train their first group of witnesses, but then we also talk about how to run a chapter of Silent Witness. So, for instance, there's a train the trainer. There's, you know, how do you do a training? There's how do you work with the different organizations that, you know, for instance, the police. What kinds of supplies do you need to have when you do this? So there's a lot of information that they need to have.
In addition, our training includes, you know, things like making sure that the peacekeepers stay with a buddy for their own protection. And we issue whistles now. This is something that we just started this year for emergency use. And we also train our folks now in some intervention techniques. The precautions that we need to take before we go to an event include things like getting in touch with the local police force, making sure that they understand what we're up to, and really get a better idea of what their plans are in terms of their deployments. In addition, we scope out the area. If it's someplace we've never been before, we try and get there beforehand so that we can you know, get a clear picture in our minds as to what the lay of the land is and where things are likely to take place.
There's a a lot of different ways that people detox.
We absorb that negativity over time. And you've got to get rid of it because it's a very toxic kind of thing, that if you don't express it in some fashion, it's going to eat at you.
And I just surround myself with people that I love and who care about me. And I talk a lot about it because you really cannot not talk about it. I think that it's probably one of the worst things anybody could do is internalize all of it.
Really to protect the event and protect the people who are coming to the event. It improves the atmosphere because everybody can relax. If they can get a violent response, then they can file a lawsuit typically. And that means that they can sometimes get money from the lawsuit, number one, but also it gives them an opportunity to raise funds from their supporters.
When we're successful at one of these events and there's no violence, there's no money in the pocket of the protesters. Litigation is their best fundraising, and we take it right out of their hands, and that's really important.
All the events that we've done over the last 3 years, and we've now done several dozen, probably closer to 50, there has not been a single arrest and not a single lawsuit filed.
Because we are there, they don't show at all. And then they really have a peaceful event.
People going into the event have said, thank you for being here. We feel safe now that you're here. From my own standpoint, this is as close as you can get in following in the steps of Martin Luther King. This is non-confrontational, non-violent, standing up for what you believe. And it's a very satisfying thing to do.
A row of us stood with our umbrellas open and behind us and facing toward the protesters. And we were looking out at the Pride Festival and people having a good time. And all this obscene hatred behind me was such a contrast to the joy and fun and love of the people within the Pride Fest that all I have to do is remember that scene and I know why I'm there.